Hey everybody, this is Tim and Brett from Skillwork. In the video today, we're going to be talking about 8 excuses or objections that companies make about changing their hiring practice. This is not an earth-shattering concept, but in case you didn't know it, change is really hard, especially in your organization as it matures and gets a little larger and kind of gets set in its ways. It just gets difficult to embrace new concepts or doing something different than maybe you've done in the past.
We're in the new year, so what better time to talk about change? Habits or something, whether good or bad, they're hard to change.
Yeah, very much so. But the fact of the matter is we have a skilled shortage issue that we're trying to face, so you need to maybe look at new and alternative approaches to doing that.
It's really clear that in the U.S. today that we have a very large skilled trade shortage, and so the natural tendency is to think, well, what's a way to find the talent? If the talent isn't out there, what are the options to find it? I like to think that some of the best ideas really come in the midst of a challenge. If things are going pretty well, we tend not to look for a new idea. There's not as much reason to. And so I think today, statistics show in the next 5 years, we'll have a shortage of over 2 million skilled workers. Probably 25 years ago now, the hospital industry or the nursing industry had a similar problem, and the issue was a shortage of nurses. You had people that needed care, and they needed to make sure that they had talented nurses to put in those hospitals. So at that time, out of pure need to solve a problem, they created what is now referred to as the travel nursing model. Some people would refer to that, if you want to kind of broaden it beyond just nursing, they would refer to it as a supplemental labor model. And so in a supplemental labor model, the concept is that the talent is out there, but it's not where you need it when you need it. So the concept of find the talent and then put it in that location for a period of time or for a season, whatever that need is. It really requires companies today who are looking for skilled trade to say, is this a concept that we really need to think about and look at as we look to solve our problem?
Well, the thought I had was that necessity is a mother of invention, that what you said. So the objection here is, how are you going to find the talent if we can't? We see this as an opportunity. We see a target-rich environment because half the battle is knowing where to look.
We have a similar concept in the skilled trade space right now. It's not that there's not talent out there, it just isn't where we need it when we need it.
Yeah, so I was thinking about what you said, Brett, and the quote, necessity is a mother of invention. So if you look around right now, there's a necessity to find these skilled laborers, and we often get asked, well, if we can't find them, how are you guys going to be able to find them? And well, that's our job. We're really good at it, and we believe it's a target-rich environment. To borrow an analogy from the military, my background, target-rich environment means there are plenty of opportunities for targets, and we see that. It's just knowing where to look. It may not be in your backyard. The workers are there, and it's a matter of connecting those workers to where you need them at the right time, at the right place.
The risk if you don't if you don't find the right talent is that you'll start to accept lesser talent. Part of that creates even a bigger issue. So the idea that in a situation where you have a large shortage, like we're talking about in the skilled trade, you really have to open up your thought process to utilizing all the resources that are out there. And I think what Tim and I would share today, taking from what the nursing industry learned 30 years ago and today is a very vibrant solution. Today 15% of all nurses in the U.S. are supplemental labor. That sounds like maybe a good idea. It's a proven concept, and so now starting to utilize it in different spaces. You could utilize it in skilled trades. You could utilize it in other spaces. Well, we just happen to specialize in the skilled trade space. But if you don't find these solutions and at least try them and adapt to them, The risk is that you start to accept lesser talent because that's what's available to you, And in that process, it has a lot of ramifications, everything from productivity to less engaged, because of culture, all those types of things.
Where people say it's impossible, we believe in American exceptionalism, and we think when American industry is faced with challenges like that, we do our best work. So we're excited about the future. So this is a very real objection that we hear, and there's some validity to it, to be honest with you. I faced it in my own background where I've used contracted labor, supplemental labor, travel labor, and there have been times when they have been undependable. I couldn't count on them for sometimes very critical projects. So why is that? Why do they have that attitude? The fact of the matter, oftentimes you follow that back to the root cause, and it has to do with many of the staffing agencies. Their business model is more of a quantity, just pushing numbers through. They don't focus as much on long-term relationship with their skilled staff. They don't see them as long-term or permanent employees. So those temporary workers that arrive at your work location are there with the idea that I don't have any sort of long-term commitment from the company I'm working for, so I'm looking for that. And oftentimes, just when you get comfortable with your temporary labor professional, they leave, they find something else because they're looking for that more dependable long-term relationship. Or even worse, it's a kind of a bait and switch, if you will. They show up on the job, you've done an interview, maybe there's been a resume review, they show up and they just simply don't have the skill set that they've been sold as having. So they show up there and they have a lack of long-term commitment, and they don't have the skill set that you need to be able to achieve that objective. So we and other companies are taking a hard look internally at ourselves as the staffing industry and realizing that we need to make a commitment to our employees. We need to look at them as a long-term relationship. For you, if you've had that situation before and you're concerned about that, our recommendation is do your due diligence. Look for a company that you can partner with that understands that skilled professionals deserve the respect, they deserve a long-term commitment, and they deserve a company, a mothership, if you will, that's going to take care of them and make sure that the last thing they have to worry about is where they're going to be working in a month or 2 months or 3 months. So stability for them allows them to focus on your requirement, even though they may be temporary at your site. For us, we see a long-term relationship with them.
The temporary model in certain work environments or in certain needs, it works very well. I think where the challenge becomes in the skilled trade space, it's more specialized. Trying to use a model that works very well in some spaces may not work quite as well in another space, which is why in our case and in other companies' cases, we've begun to look at what we refer to as more of a supplemental labor model versus a temporary model. If you're a temp worker by nature, a lot of them are they're only doing that till they find something permanent. So that in itself can create, some of the issues that you mentioned.
Yeah, for us, as part of the staffing industry profession, our business model focuses on bringing respect to our skilled tradesmen, treating them the way we want to be treated as part of our core values. So, we're looking for a long-term relationship with our skilled tradesmen, and they may be at your site to supplement your project or your short-term need, but we're looking at a long-term relationship for them. That gives all of us, we're looking for a place where we don't have to worry about whether I'm going to have an opportunity in the future. So we're removing that sense of anxiety that they have so they can focus on bringing quality and competence to your location. The other thing I mentioned is the resistance or the objection that they're incompetent. Again, how do you solve that? We'll partner with a company that spends a lot of time and effort making sure that the people that we supply not only meet your expectations but exceed them. So spend the appropriate amount of time making sure you're partnering with the right staffing company.
Whether it's a temporary model or a supplemental labor model, if you're looking for permanent fixes, you can look at these these options and think, you know, they're really not that helpful to solving my problem. Whether it's a supplemental labor model or a temporary model, the model in general of the amount of time that individuals are going to spend with your company is changing. The baby boomer generation stayed in a job on average over 10 years. The millennial and the Gen Zs, you know, that generation is already on a pattern to show that they stay in a typical job for less than 3 years. I think part of that, you know, just becomes a reality of something that we have to understand, that our workforce is just a little bit more evolving and moving already, and something that we have to adjust to. It's not that millennials are leaving companies, or the younger generations are leaving companies because the companies are doing something wrong. I think a lot of times companies are spending a lot of money, maybe your company is, on trying to figure out, what are we doing wrong? How do we get them more engaged? But the fact is, what they found is a lot of companies aren't doing anything wrong. You know, they're companies that are top companies to work for in America, but they're leaving simply because they can, you know, because there's opportunities for them, and they like experience. They like other opportunities.
You think about the point you made, Brett, was a sustainable value. You know, what's value? It's, you know, getting the most bang for your buck, getting the most out of your resources, trying to expand your organization. So there's a lot of ways you can define value, but if you're talking about sustaining the value of your organization, a big part of that is stability of your workforce, especially your core workforce. And we're no different from any other company. We have a core internal workforce that we want them to stay for as long as we can possibly keep them. It's good for business. It helps, you know, it does help us get value out of our company. But the fact of the matter is, one of the main ways to, you know, drive people out of your organization is when you have this lack of a fully staffed organization. Rather than actually decreasing value, bringing in supplemental labor can actually extend the value of your core team.
Again, as we kind of talk about resistance to change and looking at all options to way to solve the problem, you know, I don't think you want to look at the potential of a supplemental labor like, well, you know, are they going to stay long term? Are they going to be here for a year? Are they going to be here for 6 months? You know, what's that look like? To your point, Tim, the amount of damage that an organization can do to itself by not being fully staffed, even if part of that staff is supplemental for a time, you know, is critical. It has a big impact on culture.
Sure, and then, you know, a lot of people immediately when you talk about value, they say, you know, what's the cost? What's the expense associated with that? And they look purely at, well, the cost of, and both in time and actual expense of bringing in a supplemental labor. You know, that they look at that straight on a spreadsheet, and they see that looks like that's going to be more of an expense. But there's a lot of intangible expenses, sunk costs associated with turnover and bringing on new people and all the things that go along with that. Actually, there is a lot of value in stabilizing your workforce through supplemental labor, and it's just not strictly on a dollars for dollars ratio. You have to look beyond the bottom line in that sense.
The skilled trade problem is not going away. It's going to continue to grow, and we really have to be open to finding the talent that we need to be successful. And if that way is other options like supplemental labor, we'd encourage you to seek that out.
So the fact of the matter is, you really can't afford to lose time and money on your existing approach in terms of finding the right skilled labor to address your labor shortage. Some facts from a recent Society for Human Resource Management survey I found very compelling with respect to this topic. Traditional internal hiring practices on average takes about 1 to 4 months, depending on skill set, location, wages, etc. And we're finding the more advanced skill set, which is the growing trend across construction, manufacturing, field service, and transportation, more technical actually requires more time. So time is money. If it takes on the average of 1 to 4 months, it's pretty easy to equate what that looks like in terms of not only the cost to do that search, but the impact of your ongoing operations for not having the skilled labor you need to be able to address the shortages or meet that project deadline. A second thing that came out in that study that I also thought was compelling is that the cost to hire an employee on average is a little over $4,000 and takes about 42 days. So put that in terms of money. It's costing you about $4,000 every time you go out and try to hire an employee. And I think we made a point previously that the odds of you actually having that employee show up and stay there for longer than 3 months, those statistics also indicate that you're losing probably more money than that on average. The third thing that I thought was compelling with respect to the argument that we can't afford this new approach and process is that the cost of a bad hire, getting the wrong guy or the wrong person, according to another study by Career Builder, estimates that cost around $7,000 to $10,000 per employee. So pretty soon, the cost of this begins to add up. So the fact of the matter is, you're actually adding costs to the bottom line by not looking for alternative methods to solve this solution.
You read those statistics and you almost get caught up in the fear, well, I don't want to make a bad hire, so I won't make any hire.
Yeah.
And so, which obviously is not a good solution. But I think all of these point to the need to just be very open to looking at better solutions or additional solutions to solving this problem. Everything from finding the right people and getting them, hopefully through the process, more efficiently, where you have to apply less of your own internal resources to getting that done.
Yeah, so what we're talking about here is risk exposure to your company. So you have a staffing risk. It's very real. It's one of the number one risks that keep leaders awake at night. The risk to not having the right people at the right time and right place to meet my goals and objectives. So what do you do with risk? Well, you can mitigate it, and mitigate it is looking for alternative approaches, or you can transfer. You can transfer that risk, transfer the cost associated with it to a company or a partner who deals with this every day, who is a professional in this space. So rather than incur the cost and the delay associated with looking for the right worker at the right time, you simply transfer that cost and that risk to a partner, a company like ours, who focuses on making sure that we do all the vetting ahead of time, that we make sure that you get the right person at the right time and the right place. And if for some reason it isn't the right fit, that risk is ours. We're the ones that solve that problem for you, and it behooves us to do that in a timely manner. So the smart leader will look for ways to not only mitigate the risk, but to transfer those expenses. And along with that 4 months on average that you may be spending looking for an average employee, doesn't it make more sense to allocate that time to your core business, to have your people focused on advancing your goals and objectives rather than spend their time looking for the right fit? Why not put that in the hands of somebody that you can partner with and trust to do that for you?
So, the question often, gets asked, what is the true cost of hiring? I think it kind of takes on a few different topics. It's not just what's the cost of HR and those individuals and the amount of time. That has a significant value to it. I've heard numbers thrown around, of $4,000 or $5,000 because it's always a longer process than I think most companies would like. But to find the right people, it just takes more time. The other piece, when you look at the cost of hiring, is to start to look at the onboarding and the training, the lack of production, if you lose a talented person, and then just the whole concept of finding the right people to be engaged. All of those items roll into the true cost of hiring and maintaining an engaged workforce. The Center of American Progress has done several studies on this topic as to what the cost of turnover and the cost of onboarding and training is somewhere in the neighborhood of $20,000 to $30,000 per employee. The reality is almost any employee of any skill level that you're bringing in, initially, most of them are not, they're not making you money. There's a good chance that they're probably costing you money. And so when you factor all that in, the true cost of hiring and finding the right talent is pretty significant.
Yeah, I was thinking about that onboarding comment you made, Brett, and all of us, if you think about your experience, when you bring on new people, there's all the things that you mentioned about how long it takes them to get up to speed, to where they're actually productive. But most of us, when we bring somebody new on, we put them under the mentorship or training of one of our key people. So that individual, their productivity and their ability to advance your objectives is also usually what I project when I bring on people is that my person, usually I want a very qualified individual training them because I want good to train good. I count for about a 50% reduction in their productivity for the first 2 to 3 weeks. And then that gradually tapers off. So not only are you losing the ability for that new employee as they ramp up, but your current staff also loses their productivity. And then if the individual, as we mentioned in some of our other video clips, if they for some reason ghost or decide not to stay there, then you've lost not only those costs, but the lack of productivity from the person you've had to bring them up to speed.
So how can you help us in that, or where is the supplemental labor model relevant to mitigating some of this risk? There's really 2 ways that I think that it impacts your overall cost that you have to factor in when you're looking into solving these problems. One is that everything we're talking about obviously is multiplied by your turnover rate. So if you're understaffed, you're not finding the right talent, and you're creating an environment where you're having a lot of turnover, because of that, all of these onboarding costs and these efficiencies and this productivity that we're talking about is just magnified in that process. So stabilizing your workforce by utilizing all the resources to you through direct hire and supplemental labor is critical. The second point is that by bringing in the skilled trade talent at a level that allows you to reduce some of the training and the cost, because it's not just the training of that employee, it's the lack of production that you get from the people that are having to do the training and so forth. So by bringing in qualified talent, the cost reduction in the training and the onboarding is as significant or almost as significant as what the turnover of losing employees is costing you as well.
In addition to that, as you know, all these things we talked about and spoke about, that we're not immune to those sort of things either, as we're out searching for the right candidate. But because it's our focus, because it's our specialty, we put in a lot of gates. A lot of our vetting process ensures that the individual that we're providing to you, that we're deploying to your work facility, meets all your requirements, up to and including the experience level and the skill level where they can hit the ground running and actually begin to address your needs in a much shorter amount of time. So you set those thresholds with your staffing, supplemental labor staffing company partner, then again, you transfer that risk, you transfer the expense and the time associated with that to us, so that you get a fully operational, capable professional that shows up on day one.
We can bring you people in, instead of starting at the 5-yard line and marching 95 yards, we can get you at the 50-yard line and march to the end zone. That cost right there is significant.
Well, the fact of the matter is, you're right, or at least you're not wrong 100%. Staffing companies, supplemental labor companies, companies in our space have earned a reputation over time as being less than dependable, in some cases just unscrupulous in some of their approaches. And it really has to do with what the traditional model behind the staffing industry is, where it's more of a headhunter or pushing quantity rather than quality, just putting through volume of candidates, whether they were actually skilled or suited for your opportunity or not. You want it bad, you get it bad, that sort of approach. So the fact of the matter is that reputation does exist out there, and as a matter of fact, we often see that as a resistance to change or adopting one of our models, because in the past they've tried it and it hasn't worked because of the quality of the skilled worker or the supplemental labor, the temporary labor that you get through a model like ours. The fact of the matter is that not all skilled staffing agencies, supplemental labor agencies are created equally, and that's certainly not the approach that we use or the one that we would recommend that you seek out to solve this problem. People are generally going to be resistant to change, and if they've been burned in the past, people begin to establish an understanding. And oftentimes it's been said that first impressions are lasting impressions. It's hard to overcome those. This bad reputation that's out there that exists is something that we need to overcome. Well, we have a saying at our company, we say skilled labor isn't cheap and cheap labor isn't skilled. Quality goes across all spectrums of your organization, and we oftentimes, or we hear a lot of our companies say that our people are our number one most valued thing that we have. It's our greatest asset. To overcome this, you partner with a supplemental labor company like ours, for instance, who really focuses on quality and overcoming this stigma that's real. We understand that.
Yeah, I think part of it, Tim, is it's not that the temporary model or the headhunter model necessarily are bad. What it really points to, I think, in a lot of cases, is that those models were created really for a different solution. Originally, the temporary model was really built around administrative work, secretarial type work. That's how it started. The headhunter model really was based around finding more high-level C-suite type individuals that organizations needed. What I really think, the fact that now those models are being used even in the skilled trade space is really more of an indication of how big the problem is. It's not so much that, this is the right solution, but right now it's the only one in a kind of a desperate situation. I think what we would want to ask people at least to explore further, there are companies like ours in the supplemental labor space specific to skilled trades who have built their companies around getting you the quality and specific to skilled trade, not just finding you bodies or individuals, to fill jobs.
Yeah, I was thinking of a saying that I was told years ago, that every problem is not a nail and every solution is not a hammer. So sometimes you have to look for alternative approaches to solve some of these things. And I think you're right, Brett, that some of those traditional solutions that have worked in other spaces being translated have resulted in, less than optimal outcomes. There is a new approach, a new way to look at this, and we think if you find the right partner out there that aligns with your values, that elevates the value or quality of your personnel, that you'll be in good shape seeking out them as an alternative solution.
I spent about 30 plus years of my career in the manufacturing space, and so I'll pick on myself because I thought what we did was super unique. I thought that our equipment was unique, that everything we did was unique, and so you couldn't take somebody from this industry and put them in this industry and expect them to be able to be effective. I think the risk in that is that as leaders of companies, we really narrow our funnel of finding the talent that we need to solve our problem. The reality is as painful as it may be to some of us, what we do isn't that unique. Whether it's in manufacturing or whether it's in construction, there's things about every organization that hopefully is unique. Hopefully you've created a unique culture, or you've created, unique experiences. But what we do day to day, the work that we do day to day, the equipment that we use, the walls that we build, or the motor that we got to change, that it's not that unique. I would encourage all of us as we really struggle to solve this skilled trade challenge, this shortage, to be more open. There's talent out there, and if somebody has a skill set from a different industry, it might almost benefit you. We've learned in our experience with our company now, we've been able to take individuals out of different industries and put them in an industry they've never been in, and actually a lot of times they bring new way to look at things, which can be a really good thing. So I think the encouragement here is really just to be broaden your thinking. You've really got to get all options on the table to solve this, and by being narrow in your thinking, you're not helping most likely, or you're limiting your ability to build your team.
Yeah, I think that's why one of the things we really focus on is what is the aptitude of our candidates, for example. So what is their ability to learn and adapt and think on their feet? I was thinking about one of our earlier guys, and you reminded me of the story, Brett, where he was getting questioned about whether he had the experience to work in this new industry. And his comment was, whether you're producing hams or orange juice, a motor's a motor, and I can fix them. And his point was that fundamentally, whether your motor or your whatever it is that your manufacturing approach uses, fundamentally understanding that goes across many spaces. It's the aptitude and the right person to be able to apply that across industry spaces. It's a great point about the fact that it actually adds value when you bring somebody in from a different industry, because they see things from a different perspective. So it's actually a win-win.
Every facility is going to have some unique pieces of equipment, and they're going to have some unique processes, and that's okay. But you've got some folks on your team most likely already that can deal with that. The reality is whether you're hiring a new person or whether we're bringing you somebody in a supplemental labor, neither one of them are going to work on that unique piece of equipment day one. The fact is the majority, 80% of your skilled trade individuals are working on a pretty general need that you have in the facility, which is the majority of the need. Use those specialty people to do that, and most likely those are the ones that you're going to build up internally.
Addressing culture and making culture a key important facet of not only your organization but your hiring approach is a step in the right direction. Particularly traditionally manufacturing, construction, transportation, some of the industries that we deal with in the skilled labor field haven't necessarily looked at or elevated their company culture in the past, but they are more and more, and they're recognizing it's challenging to find people that are aligned with their culture. We recognize that as well, and it's been said that actually bringing in a bad culture fit, one individual coming into a very positive culture that you've spent a lot of time and energy setting in place, is akin to bringing in a virus, a physical virus. Just like you wouldn't bring somebody in that's suffering from a cold symptoms, sneezing and coughing all over the place into the middle of a workplace, nor would you want to bring in somebody that's got a bad culture into your environment. How do you address that? How do you find those people that align with your culture? Maybe in a traditional sense, some of the staffing industry companies look for people that match up just on a skills basis alone. Do they have the exact skill that you need to fit your needs? While we see that as very crucial, we also see aptitude and personality being just as important. As a matter of fact, companies that focus on looking at aptitude, looking at personality before they even begin to assess that person's skill level is crucial to make sure that they're going to seamlessly fit into your organization. Because you may bring in somebody who's got, is the most gifted electrician that you've seen on your plant floor, but if they don't fit with your culture, that's like kryptonite to your organization.
No, absolutely. And the difference between having an engaged employee and an unengaged employee, is significant to culture. It starts with everything from being late, to calling in sick more, to not being as productive, to complaining a lot. So it's similar to what you said a minute ago, Tim, about the virus. That's a virus to your culture. And so I think one thing that we would offer up through our vetting process of aptitude and personality and skills, we're really finding kind of the best of the best, so to speak. And we're able to find employees for you that are highly engaged. And so I was just at a company actually earlier this week, and they basically told me when I walked in, our culture's bad. We've got to fix the culture. Right. And they said, so we need you to find us not just the talent, not just the skilled trade, but we need guys that can affect or inject positive culture here, and we're looking to you to help us do that.
Yeah, so conversely, instead of injecting a virus, it's vitamin C. You want to bring somebody that adds to your culture, something that adds value to what you're doing. So what we recommend is that just as you're looking at a partner in this space that understands how to find the right skilled labor, ask those companies, what do you do specifically to address a good culture fit, to make sure that's the right individual that's going to fit into our culture? Are they asking you the right questions about what's an ideal candidate look like for your organization to fit in your culture? Two plants in the same town on opposite sides of the city can have 100% complete different culture, or even a same company that has multiple plants. Plant to plant, we're seeing each one of them has their own unique culture, their own way of doing things, the things that they value, and it's really crucial to the productivity, the morale of your current workforce. It's already a destabling thing to bring in a new individual. Just this morning, I was talking to one of our client managers and recruiters who was moving one of our candidates, potentially moving one of our skill workers from one facility to another. And I was challenging them because this other facility is completely different culture. Is that the right fit? Are we trying to put literally a square peg into a round hole? Let's make sure that that's the right culture fit, regardless of whether it's the right skill set. So there's a lot that goes into that. You spend a lot of time and energy establishing your culture there, and the last thing you need is to be infected with a virus.
Thanks for taking the time to watch this video. For more information on how your organization can overcome the skilled labor shortage in America, visit skillwork.com.